Hi, Paul Thompson here from Spitfire Audio. Happy holidays. I hope everyone is safe and well and enjoying the holiday season. I'm going to show you something today, which is a little bit of music I wrote actually for a film, for a kind of a winter scene in a shopping mall. So this is a piece of library music. So the idea was that it was a simple theme that just got developed and, had enough changes in it to make it feel interesting. And so I think it's really quite a useful thing to look at, because I can show you a few ideas of how I've taken a little piece of musical material and developed it. Now, all the libraries I'm using in the sale are 40% off. Everything I'm using here, 40% off. So it's the perfect time to grab any of these if any of them catch your ear. Right, let's dive straight in. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play down the first sort of 30 or 40 seconds, and then I'll start talking about the different things that I've done. Okay, so you get the idea. What are the things that I've done that I think make this sound kind of festive? Well, the most blindingly obvious one is, of course, the sleigh bells. And we've got this fantastic Labs sleigh bells. It's the first thing that you would use to make anything sound kind of Santa-like. So what have we got going here? So we open with the strings playing a kind of spiccato pattern, a kind of motoring thing where I'm just gradually adding in little bits. So it starts off with violin ones and violin twos playing a kind of interlocking pattern, and then we start adding in the violas. The transition at the point where the cellos and basses come in, if I just play that quickly. So there's two things here. One is that I'm always talking about transitions. There's something that I really like to use, and I think is very, very common in film music, TV music, games music. Transitions are great. They give you kind of signposts as to where you are. And it's an easy way of kind of making a build in a piece of music. Now here I'm doing a couple of different things. So I'm passing the thematic material around different sections of the orchestra. That's one way to make a transitional change. But the second thing that I'm doing is I'm introducing different elements of the frequency spectrum at different times. So you notice there that I've held off with everything low frequency, obviously apart from trombones playing that opening melody with the trumpets. The idea being always about having a really nice clear transition and a really nice contrast in different types of musical material. So what happens to the musical material? Well, we've got the fantastic new total performance patch for the brass library, symphonic brass library, and that is kind of soloing over the thematic trumpets. That's a really good combo. And then we've got the BBC Symphony Orchestra trombones playing at the bottom there. Now you'll see that I've also got set up a reverb here, which I'm just kind of using on everything, but it is muted at the moment, so you're not hearing it. I'm just going to show you the difference when I kick that in. So have a quick listen. There's not a huge amount that it's doing to kind of colour the sound, but it does give a little bit of extra glue to bind everything together. If I play these 3 brass parts here at the opening, if you have well recorded samples in a great sounding room, it's not something that is unfamiliar to the ear to hear those samples being blended together, different recordings, different rooms. Yes, most score mix engineers will use a reverb to kind of bind everything together to make everything sound a little bit more like it's in the same room. But it's something that is really, really common, especially with movie music and games music, where scores are recorded in different places at different times with overdubs, and cues may start in one room and end in another room if you've got a pickup session and the original studio is busy. It's not something that's unfamiliar to the ear. It's really, really very familiar. You can hear how well these 3 blend. So our reverb is turned off. So we're literally just hearing the sound out of the box. And check this out, 3 different rooms. SSO Trumpet Total Performance in Air Lyndhurst Hall, Abbey Road Thematic Trumpets, obviously Abbey Road Studio 1, and the BBC Symphony Orchestra trombones recorded in the home of the BBC Symphony Orchestra at Maida Vale. Check out how they blend together. You can hear it slightly loose. So some things I've quantized and some things I haven't. And again, I'm not too worried about that, because I think that as long as the kind of motor is going in time, which for me are the short string sounds, I'll either just play things in and leave them slightly loose to give you that nice feeling of the music breathing, or I will sometimes quantize them a little bit and use the quantized strength just to make sure that I'm just pulling them a little bit towards the grid, but not too much, so it doesn't become too mechanical and lose all the musical feel. So I'll add the reverb halfway through. And you can hear there the tail that you're getting from the cinematic rooms. It's not really, I'm not really leaning into it too heavily, because I've got, like I say, a beautiful room sound from each of these recordings. They all sound great, and blending them together, it sounds good, and so I'm not worried about it. So what else is going on here? Well, on the melody, I've got the celeste and the Glock, and if we listen to the way that those kind of interplay, so we've probably got Tchaikovsky to thank for this, but with the Nutcracker. But of course, adding the celeste and the Glock immediately makes things feel kind of festive and brings that holiday spirit. I've got the choir coming in after this. So remember that, as I was saying, sectional things move the melody around. At the moment, I'm just playing the straight melody, but if we have a look at these woodwinds that I've got going here, and I'm using the SSO Total Performance Flute, which is a new free update to the symphonic woodwinds. More of those coming next year. What I'm doing here is I bring in the cor anglais, and it just prefigures that kind of little musical motif, the da-da-dum, da-da-dum. You've got that coming in a little bit earlier on a harmony, just to kind of make the musical material sound a little bit different. And I've got the choir backing that up, this fabulous Eric Whittaker choir. Now with these, I'm literally just using the evolution sounds. So if we look at this one, I'm using the R's with the tenors and basses, so they've got a slightly fuller sound, and then the O's with the higher with the sopranos and altos. So that sounds like this altogether. So this is something that I like to do a lot. And that is kind of have a pedal note, but it doesn't have to be a pedal note in the bass. So we always think of a pedal note as like, boom, just leave that down and then you play loads of stuff over it. Fabulous. That really works well. But I put my pedal notes all over the place. I've got suspensions going, and that really is just about kind of holding down. And you get some really lovely kind of blends. It's really straightforward to just kind of play this kind of stuff in. And I think as long as you have an idea of where the chords are going, so you've got your melody, and then, that's slight variation there. But it's all kind of moving around. We've got that scale set. It's basically the G major scale. And all of that kind of stuff, using those suspensions, holding down a pedal note, that kind of root note through the thing. So you've got something that's, it's kind of mimicking in a way what we're doing with the strings. We've got that kind of motor going on the short string sounds. That's giving us our kind of, our kind of open fifth sound, our octave sound. And here we're really just kind of playing with the tensions and seeing where we can get some interesting little crunchy bits as the melody plays out. It's all about trying to add colour and interest, and so that you don't end up with just very, very straightforward, which is essentially all that's going on. But, if we can add in this musical interest with these suspensions and these clusters, that's all good. We have the piano coming in after that. So let's get rid of the woodwinds. And let's add in the piano, but keep the choir. Now you can hear that I'm doing the same kind of thing with the piano. I've got my, I'm kind of almost, even though I'm playing these all as chords, I'm using pedal notes inside there, and I'm trying to get, squeeze as much as I can out of these clusters, out of these little clashes between the root and especially the root and the F sharp, which you'd listen to and you'd think, well, that's a pretty horrible sound, but it's all about context. So that just on its own, fairly unpleasant. But in context, and again, tension resolution always helps as well. So it's all about context with these clusters. As long as you get the context right, then you'll find super easy to use these kind of things. We've got the woodwinds and the piano doing these kind of chirrupy sounds, should we call them? Super, super loose, but in context, so the piano is just doing that kind of arpeggiated thing, which is very, very loose and just kind of going up and down. And then the woodwinds are kind of going onto the beat, so ba-dum, 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 rather than ba-dum, 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 which I quite like. It's just slightly different to the way that you might usually expect to hear that. And then we've got appassionata, just the violin ones, the violas, and the cellos. This starts out with a kind of counter melody, and then I bring a harmony into the counter melody. So check this out. I guess it's really just a straightforward harmonisation, but the thing that I quite like about it is where the viola picks up. So if we just hear the viola entry. So the viola is starting on the B, which is the note that the violins have just left, or the cellos if you're in the right octave. And that gives you a really nice kind of continuity of sound. So I love little tricks like that as well. Intentionally passing the note that you've arrived at to a different instrument. And if you can work that into a harmonization, that's always a really lovely thing to hear. Your mind becomes attuned to the sounds that you hear. Once you've heard a certain instrument playing something, you're settled onto that, and that's great. And then if you can introduce that extra color of suddenly that instrument goes somewhere else and another one takes over exactly where that left off, it's just a little bit of ear candy, I guess, is the way that I think about it. Very simple melody, very simple chords. It's not trying to be super complex, but within that simplicity, you can find these little moments of interest, of ear candy that are really lovely to hear. It just adds interest and texture to what you're writing. So let's solo the xylophone and these low strings down here. There's a little bit of texture in there. We're using the spiccatos on the cellos and basses and pizzicato on the violas, and then we've got the xylophone, which is always good for it's so pointed, the sound of the xylophone, that it's always great for adding an accent onto your strings. It gives a really lovely sharp attack. So you get the idea how that all locks together. I'm also trying to do something that's always thought of as a kind of Jerry Goldsmith theory of only having three things going at any one time. So three kind of conceptual ideas in the arrangement. So here we've got the kind of melody with its associated harmony. We've got our kind of straightforward motor going, and that's the sleigh bells, the high strings are kind of doing a very, very regular thing that we just become used to. And then we've got this interesting little kind of cross rhythm push sort of style going on in the xylophone and in the lower strings, without making it too kind of dense and then losing some of the kind of character and some of the identity of it. You can just add bits in as long as you haven't got too many ideas going at any one time. I think you maintain the clarity of the sound. Looking just at this last little bit that we were going out with, we've got a couple of things happening here. So our high strings have just stopped, and then we're just passing a counter melody, or a kind of a melodic idea that's kind of related to the original idea, into the lower woodwinds and the horns. So here we've got some BBC Symphony Orchestra woodwinds, and we've got the Abbey Road thematic horns. I'm just using mix 1 for almost everything in this session. Everything from Abbey Road and everything from the BBC Symphony Orchestra. The only things that have extra mics are the total performance patches, because I like to hear the close mic, I like to hear the finger clicks and things like that. On those strings from Appassionata, I just love the sound of the outriggers and the mid mics together. So I'm not using the mix, even my own mix for that one. I'm just using those two mics. But here, let's have a quick listen to this little thematic idea. So we're taking that fragment from the melody, and we're just adding a little bit of harmony to it with the cor anglais breaking off there, and then just doubling it with the horns, the bassoon and bass clarinet. You might think that as a slightly odd pairing, but I think of the colour with the horns, you've got that kind of mellowness still in the clarinet and the bassoon. But I think what they bring to it is they just bring a tiny bit of brightness and articulation to the horns, especially with these wonderful players from the BBC Symphony Orchestra. So that's always great. If you want something lyrical, don't always think of only the instrument that's in the range typically that you might be playing. Also think, I wonder what would happen if I played out of range, out of the typical range that you might use for one of these other instruments. And for this, getting that beautiful bassoon sound, just absolutely lovely. Check it out. It's really, really lovely. And of course, the higher you go, the more expressive and lyrical the bassoon becomes. I'm just going to highlight everything just so you can see kind of pictorially what is going on here. I'm just going to move up and down a little bit in the session as I play through just that first minute so that you can see how things are interlocking with each other. So there we go. That's a little bit of kind of musical fun. Just a few ideas, a few arrangement ideas, and a few kind of specifically winter season ideas in there. So I hope that was useful. I hope there's a couple of ideas in there that you might be able to take away and use in your own work. And as I say, all of the libraries that I'm using, everything 40% off. So it's a great time to pick something up if you've had your eye on something, or it maybe listening to something in here has caught your ear and you think, oh, I'd like to add that to my palette. There's lots and lots of different choices, different kinds of sounds. And as I've said many times before, it's very, very straightforward to blend this stuff together. As long as you've got good sounds, great players recorded in a great sounding room, most of these sound libraries will mix together reasonably straightforwardly. So thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year. Bye-bye.